Because I think, obviously, with Endfield, I think one of the consensuses in the community is the story's not its strongest point, right? It definitely starts off, well, the initial 30 minutes, the very start of the game, brilliant, right? And then it goes into a bit of a slog. The pacing's not great. I think that's one, because the game is really set up as a way to introduce systems to you, which I think negatively affects the story as well. I've just entered Wuling, and things are definitely getting better, definitely improving. But I think the general consensus from the community is, it's a bit weak. If you're coming from the gacha games that have got a good few years behind them now, obviously 1.0s are typically weak. If you're coming from Arknights, then it's super weak, right? Because if you played Arknights, you're used to really good storytelling, really good character arcs, and obviously this is something that happens over time, but it starts off really good, right? So let's see what this person's saying here on Reddit, shall we? Because Endfield 1.0's story and why it sucks from a writer's perspective. So let's get it from the writer's angle then, shall we? Because I'm just a smooth brain who plays games, and I know what I like, but, my critical evaluation doesn't go much beyond that, okay? So let's see what this person's got to say then. So, disclosure. I've been playing Arknights since May 2021. I've played some of the gachas as well, all of which I've dropped. I've participated in Enfield's tech test in January 2024, but otherwise didn't play until launch. I've read through all of the main story and completed every mission and quest. Beyond that, I wasted 5 years of my creative writing degree. Naturally, it hasn't paid off. Discussion ends with a bit of a rant. Wait, so has he just got a creative writing degree, or is he actually a writer? Okay, why does Enfield's story suck? We can boil this down into 3 issues, the first 2 funneling into the third. The game's characters and themes are too shallow. There is a crippling lack of meaningful stakes. Hypergryph is afraid to take risks. I do think there is at the minute, especially at the start, right, when you're in Valley 4, the themes and the characters do feel a little shallow, right? They do feel a little shallow. There's a definite premise and potential, but initially, it's not Reunion. It's not the introduction to Reunion and this operating within the grey, and you're seeing terrible things being committed, terrible things being done, people being used left, right, and centre, but you understand some of the reasoning for some of the terrible things that are being done, at least by some people, right? Because people have been downtrodden, treated like crap, ostracised, starved, killed, treated just terribly, right? The Reunion is an incredibly intriguing and antagonistic group to be introduced to, isn't it, right? It really is one of the most interesting for me in gacha gaming. They're relatable, they're human, aren't they? There's a crippling lack of meaningful stakes. So I think, obviously, I've just got to Wuling, so I'll have to see how things change. But I suppose we really don't have much stakes, really, I guess, right? Am I being a bit harsh there? It doesn't feel like it feels like the potential again. Everything feels like it's coming, but it's not quite there yet, at least anyway. Hypergryph is afraid to take risks. I think this is probably somewhat true, and I understand it, right? This is a massive change in what they're used to, and this has took a lot of investment, and usually with risk comes companies playing it safe, right? They tend to play it safe, so I can't hate them for it, but also it can lead to mediocrity, right? Let's hope that they made a lot of money. Well, it looks like they've made a lot of money, and the fact that the demographics are coming out, that majority of the players are on PC and console, it's going to take a while for that to take effect, but I'm hopeful that can potentially change the roadmap in terms of how they're going to tackle the game, because of course they've still got to cater for the mobile audience, but it's like 60% PC in China and 70% PC and console in global. The majority of people are playing on PC in this game, and console as well, so hopefully they cater to that audience, right, without excluding the mobile audience, but you know what I mean, in terms of that, you know, what they expect from a gamer's game, right? You know, a little bit more to it. So we'll have to wait, and hopefully it's almost like a carrot on a stick. You know, okay, we got more of the normies in, we got people in who want it a little bit soft and fluffy, and then we hit them in the feels. Hopefully, we'll have to wait and see, right? I don't know if that's going to happen, but, you know, hopefully. I'm coping, maybe. You'll notice you recognise all of these. Yes, the common complaints are correct. However, regarding tutorial pacing, while it's true it sucked in Valley 4, true, the problem was reduced in Wuling and will likely be mitigated further. I believe so. I think as we go further, new gimmicks will be introduced. You'll learn them, and you already know what you're doing anyway, right? And then it'll be more, you know, story, combat, and that's what it'll be. Obviously, the factory will still be a part of it, but you'll know what you're doing, right? So they'll be able to go full steam ahead as well. Here I'm focusing on long-term concerns, which, if continued, will doom the story, okay? The game's characters and themes are too shallow. Like a Saturday morning cartoon, putting aside the incessant glazing of an administrator, who ironically should talk more. Thank you. I agree, because when we got to see the admin talking in the Surta story, I loved her. Like, how likeable is she? Like the ENVA as well, with the way she's animated and everything, and the emotions that she puts on her face, and just how, like, you know, human and relatable the two connection is between Surta and Enmin in some of those cutscenes. It makes her really likeable. So yes, more Enmin talking, more relatable Enmin, please. The issue is painted in black and white. Enfield Industries can do no wrong. Well, I don't know, man. I feel like so far, yeah. Well, the whole point of, like, Neferif and the Landbreakers, although it's incredibly, like, you know, one-dimensional initially, is that always the case? You know, we've seen some little flashes of stuff where it's like, well, I don't know. You know, well, again, no. I get what he's saying, no. Or she's saying. Where are we? Can do no wrong. We use a weakened but still cancerous rock to reclaim the frontiers for the willing, all while making them reliant on our systems. Do we want to worry about that? Nah, the Bone Crushers are clearly the threat. These illiterate, pipe-faced Mad Max junkies know a grand total of 20 words: pillage, good, smash, etc. They're strung along by an as yet characterless boss, who in turn answers to a mysterious twink. Bro, to be fair, that scene where bro comes in and just, like, basically, like, walks through her domain expansion, that was fire. Like, honestly, that dude was aura-farming in there. I thought that was a really cool scene, man. Like, that's when I was like, ooh, shit feels like it's starting to step up a little bit now. And then he just banishes into the Shadow Realm. No clear explanations or nuance, only the barest hints of depth. Meanwhile, Wuling's factions can't get along and see each other as spineless nerds or meathead brutes. Cool. Where have I seen that before? The problem is how superficial the dive into both sides feels. Whether in Valley 4 or Wuling, if you, as a writer, want to get players invested, you have to be more creative and honest in how you present factions up front. Okay. What about the characters' side quests? Sadly, they were better in the beta. Compare Wolfguard CBT quests and to how it released, and you'll observe the tunification in effect. I didn't play his side quest, actually. I've heard apparently Gilberta's isn't as good as well. I don't know. I've only played Surta so far, and I think Surta's side quest was some of the best story that we've had in the game. Actually, the best story that we've had in the game. It was better than anything that I've seen so far in the game. And I think, like, when you first meet Tang Tang as well, it's like, I just found that really fun. Less violence, less nuanced characters, less Enmin voice presence. The first point might seem like a strange complaint, but Arknights' main story has always been dark. Some side events might shift away from it, but Terra's a crappy place for a reason. Why should Talos 2 be any different? Well, it's not Terra, for one, right? And there's lots of reasons why it could be different. We can't say that yet. Societal changes post whatever happens in Arknights, who knows, right, eventually. So I don't know if you can argue why it shouldn't be any different at the moment. They're just as desperate for survival to the point of joining the deluded Bone Crushers to begin with. Why sugarcoat so much conflict when that smothers a core theme? And that's fair in terms of it is a little bit fluffy. It does feel a little bit fluffy. And the fact is, we are on a frontier world, so survival is, you know, important and is, you know, going to be harsh as well, right? We are on a survival world. We got cut off from Terra. unsuspectedly. So, yeah, okay, unexpectedly, sorry. Now let's look at a good example. Levitane's quest. While being a beat-for-beat rehash of Surtur's IS stories, nails everything to a T, sets stakes, utilises a common connection, memory issues between Lev and Enmin to further their relation, which I really enjoyed, and allows the characters to come full circle while acknowledging their unique suffering. Enmin gets plenty of voice too, allowing them to feel more like a person. Admittedly, it helps that the plot didn't have to be violent, which probably saved it from being cleansed. Well, we're assuming there, but I get what he's saying. There's, you know, I guess we've got some evidence that some stuff has been cleaned up, because we did see the whole, what was it, you know, Ginny? It was a lot darker back in the day, wasn't it, in that, and then made it so it wasn't so much now. So, and I would like to see some of that come back. Hypergryph, don't be scared to, you know, take it there, take it to those emotional places, you know, have things, have some inevitability to them. You know, this is what's going to happen, and it's not a good thing, and it can only be this way, and that's sometimes how it happens, right? So, you know, but I understand at the same time they're trying to be as broad as possible, and with that is gonna come some, you know, some trimming of the fat that we might want. We don't see it as fat, but they will, because I think it's, you know, it's worth, well, we can get rid of that and we can still keep the you know, the gist of the story there. So yeah, I agree. I would like to see them delve into that stuff a little bit more as well. But I understand that, you know, the rating and getting out there to as many people as possible, even though every gacha game should be 18 plus. Anyway, Yvonne and Gilberta's quest are nothing. They waste 3/4 of their run doing random shit, and the final 1/4 isn't about them so much as it's someone else. Gilberta spouts broadly applicable reconvener philosophy while using a faceless NPC's experience to try and build a more meaningful conclusion. I don't know about this, so I can't say. Only it doesn't delve into Gilberta herself. She's slandered as a generic love interest set for the Endmin, down to the hand-holding at the end. The fact that Hypergryph decided to prioritise this over addressing the one NPC who needed closure, which then could have led into something more for Gilberta, is embarrassing on their part. Worst story by them I've ever read. That's harsh. Is that true? Is that actually true? I haven't read that, so I can't say. That's a damning indictment on Gilberta's quest there. The worst story they've ever read, which they've read a lot of good stuff as well, so, you know, I guess, but I haven't. It's not true. It's not that bad. Okay, I can't say because I haven't read it. Right, so there is no nuance to be had. Problematic depth has been removed or suppressed, and generic romantic scenes have been added instead. It's definitely not too late to fix, but the precedent it lays is grave. Okay. I do have certain worries about the story myself. One, being too fluffy and light, and not really dealing with real stuff. But Surtur's quest made me a little bit more confident in that. You know, the question of oneself and the introspective look on having another person's memories, but it's your memories, but at the same time it's not, because you're now a different person and stuff like that. And Surtur's quest as well quelled some of my worries about the Endmin, but I need more of that in the game, because I think my biggest fear is the Endmin just becoming another rover. You know? That's my biggest fear. And I just, after doing Surtur's quest, there was so many points in that quest where it was like, I really like the Endmin in this quest. Give me more of this. Because probably my favourite main character in a gacha game is probably Belle from Zenless Zone Zero. Because they've got so much to them that they feel like a real person. And that makes for better storytelling, right? Rather than just a semi-mute character that we can impress ourselves onto, you know, like a self-insert. There's a crippling lack of meaningful stakes. Most gacha games bear this issue, but Endfield is no exception. What's truly disappointing about this is, again, the comparison to the original Arknights. We have to separate some of that though, guys. We do. Don't get me wrong. I want good stuff, but we can't expect the same thing that Arknights would, and a writer would know that, because with Arknights, you have stages that can be kind of abstract from what's going on. So, yeah, you just let the writers go to town. There's no direction. There's no scenes to animate and have people working on all of that stuff and get voice actors in. You just let writers write. They just write, right? And then you stick some PNGs on the screen, and then you usher it into a bit of combat with some words. Sometimes it's not even necessarily there, and then you're into the stage and tie it in lightly, right? So it's never going to be the same in that regard. And they even said that if you want the wordy, deep experience in that regard, Arknights is there for you. This is going to be something different. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be bad, though, okay? I just want to get that out there. But, you know, it's going to be totally different, right? It just is, and you can't get the same thing. Otherwise, the game would never get finished, would cost too much money to make, and it just wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't happen. We've got to expect the scope's got to come down a little bit, right? So, plenty of people dying AK. Most of them are faceless operators or random NPCs, but at least they were clearly dying back then. Here, it's once in a blue moon, and there's never any visibility to it. You know, the whole Tartar thing, even though I believe the way Tartar went out, I think there's like something there for potentially Tartar to come back in some kind of incarnation. But, yo, I think that, I was like, no, bro, his little face as well as he was getting like pulled apart. I was like, no, don't do it. So yeah, all you see is the aftermath, a generic unbloodied corpse. Worse, there's no focus on the tragedy of it. Frostnova, Mandragora, etc. had long scenes depicting their demise and all the way characters reacted in response. True, there are hints of this in Endfield, but again, they are carefully obscured. God forbid someone die on screen. I'm not going to. Then there is the handling of Originium in general. Tartar doesn't feel... Yeah, I agree. Dude, just imagine if bro comes back as some fucking tanky fucking mecha that could just choke dudes out. You know, that'd be kind of sick. I gotta... Oh, where's my model? Hold up. 2 secs. Imagine if Tartar comes back as something like this. Obviously minus the little creature inside it, you know? I don't know. But yeah, I agree. Tartar Steam Knight. Ooh, dude, that'd be sick. That'd be sick. Then there's the handling of Originium in general. On Terra, Originium was a serious threat. Catastrophes, rampant discrimination, the works. On Talos 2, it's an aesthetic set piece. Treatments exist for Eurypathy. The conditions for the catastrophes don't exist, and the infected aren't hated anymore. On one hand, this means Rhode Island succeeded. On the other, what else is left? The Blight and Ether's effects on people are poorly visualized and barely explored. And I get what they're saying, right? But do we really want that same story imprinted back onto Endfield? It's about the plight of the infected once again. Now, obviously, the catastrophes and stuff have like added a cool set piece stuff to it, right? But those conditions are different on Talos. But like, do we really want to go back down that path again? Where it's just like... Because in a sense, if you go back down that path, you're setting yourself up to kind of just repeat the story again, because the same sort of factions would arise, you would think. Not exactly, but like, people would feel the same things, and I feel like you'd just be treading old ground then, personally. Of course, it would be cool to see some regions of the planet where... Because there's been a bit of a cut-off and separation and stuff, that some places people are treated like that, right? And don't have the medication and stuff like that. But yeah, I feel like we would just be kind of like treading over the old ground there, like, you know? I don't know if we necessarily need to do that. I think it's just something that was such a big part of Arknights. I guess people expect it to continue, right? Which I understand that though as well. Bills of Blight look messed up, but where are the people who have survived it? Where is my modern equivalent of the Possessed? The Haze Fire. Don't compare a little scarring to jagged spears sticking out of your organs. Well, hold on, buddy, man. We're in 1.0, man. You know, I know we've seen Blood, but like, come on. Point is, the portrayal falls flat. If you're going to hype up a new threat, you need to show how it devastates people. I think that's fair. though. I think we did somewhat see some of that, but I get what he's saying. There's Christ, definitely to the landscape. With that blight flood by the science park, it literally carved out a fucking valley, right? There's potential here in the blight tides found in Wuling, but again, the impact of those have only been implied. Show players some actual chaos, which we might get. You know, that cutscene when you first get to Wuling was fucking sick, man. In essence, it's weird player arguments. They just want the same mal reheated over and over again. No actual progress. Yeah, like, don't get me wrong. I understand... Oh, my camera's fucking freaked out. Let me Dude, I don't know why it's doing this now. I need to reset it up again. There we go. We're back. I froze. So, yeah, I get what people want in the quality and cool stuff that was in Arknights, but yeah, let's not just repeat, because then at some point, what are we doing? We're just telling Arknight's story in 3D, which I know there is a lot of people that want that, right? I know there's a lot of people that, man, and don't get me wrong, it would be cool, but I think there's a lot of people that just want that, don't they? They want Arknights put in 3D, so, yeah. Finally, there's the stakes for characters. Enmin is pressured into fitting their old role, but what about everyone else? We hardly learn anything about Perlica, anything regarding Chen's past, his breeze past in Wuling story. Others like Yvonne have no real punishment or failing, or are too talented. Wolfguard. So, I haven't gone through the Chen stuff just yet, right? But, what's to say we're not going to get a lot of extra side story stuff, right? Again, haven't gone past that yet, so I might totally agree with them soon, actually. To be in Wolfguard, to be in serious danger, even in outpost stories, there's little meaningful character growth. Everything which could be interesting gets sidelined, magically fixed, or is pointless and goes back to square one. All those errands and names for nothing. This is where I'd write an addendum on political stakes, but so far, those stakes don't exist. The main factions all get along, and there are no disputes whatsoever. Total 180 from Terra Circus, even if said circus could feel bloated. Now, we've seen in Arknights, there's a lot of backroom, dodgy machinations from political entities within Arknights. Just because so far, now obviously I've not completed Wuling, just because so far it seems on the surface that everybody gets along, do we know that? Do we know that there isn't stuff going on behind the scenes with certain factions working against other factions and we just haven't seen it yet? And that will come to a head where we will see factions actually start to move on other factions. I don't know, maybe I'm coping there, right? I don't know. I guess, maybe. I don't know. So yeah, it is only an addendum anyway. Hypergryph is afraid to take risks. I think this might be somewhat I'm agreeable on this. Like, I do agree with some of the points this person's made here. I think we're expecting everything to be in 1.0 that we saw over 6 years of Arknights. I think there is a lot of that in the community. Now, that doesn't mean that the story doesn't have issues. I think we can all agree there's problems, right? There is definite problems. There's no denying that. I think you would have to be the biggest hyperglazer to say, nah, story's perfect, right? We all know it's got issues. I do just think there's a lot of people expecting everything we've seen in terms of all the peaks and valleys that Arknights has to offer and be like, well, I ain't got it in 1.0. This game sucks. But it's fair to have the worries, right? It is fair to have the worries. I do agree. Unchecked expectations create unchecked frustrations. True. You're expecting everything all at once. Yeah. I think what people are missing is that Telosians have had great equalizer of the Anglo War. True, which I'm hoping, I don't know if we learn more about in Wuling, but it's going to be cool to learn about that sort of stuff as well. What does he sound like, Tolbaru? It'll all come back to Tobo. Okay, here we reach the bottom line. Whether it's harming characters, adding depth to the opposition, or even adding a touch of blood. Now, with the blood, I still don't know what the laws are in CNR, right? Yeah, I don't know, like, when it comes to a 2D PNG game and then you go to this, I don't know what the rules are, right? As far as I'm aware, they have to be careful with that stuff still. So, you know, they might have their hands tied on stuff like this, right? I don't know if they're talking a bit more figuratively there or literally. They might be talking more figuratively, to be fair. Hypergryph would rather play a physician and constantly wash their hands. I think he might be speaking figuratively then. AK is not supposed to be light. It's supposed to be rival Limbus in tone. But this is an Arknight, so is it like, I get what he's saying. And I agree, and I want some of that. But it is an Arknight. It's Arknights Endfield. But you can have different stories in different places within the same universe that have different tones, right? But I do agree. I want some of that. I do. I want some of the dark, foreboding, heavy feeling stuff. The stuff that make, after you finished reading it or watching it, you're like, it's not even like, oh, I'm so emotional for my waifu. It's more like, damn, let me just take a moment to think about that. Right, that was some heavy shit, man. You know, I do want that sort of stuff in the game. And I hope we do. Albeit with a more optimistic outlook, Endfield touches on this, but nothing more. It's less flawed than it is soulless, robbed of acting on its world-building depth. We went from dealing with ever-adapting ocean terrors and encroaching eldritch horrors to the north to drubbed-up bandits and some aggressive constructs. For the first impression, this stinks. Again, we're throwing in a lot of stuff that, like, happened over time. This didn't happen right away, right? So let's not compare, you know, a ripe fruit to one that's literally just been planted, right? I think we've got to be a little bit more fair there. I'm not taking away some of the stuff they're saying, no, like, I'm not, again. But, you know, I think if we're going to compare, like, we've got to compare, like, you know, 1.0, we've got to compare 1.0 Arknights, right? You know? And also, there's a lot of stuff that's just, we can't expect terrors, if you will, pardon the pun, on Talos, right? You know? Speaking of first impressions, herein lies my pet peeve. As a writer, one of the first things you're taught is that a good opening chapter is everything. That brief initial experience either sells the reader on your book or causes them to put it back on the shelf. Fair. Now consider Valley 4, bogged by all the issues above as well as its hideous onslaught of tutorials. I think fair as well. Yeah. The tutorials themselves are not the issue, it's the way they're made, right? I'm okay with the tutorials, it's the way they're implemented and how hand-holded they are. So yeah, fair, definitely. Sure, managed to sell there. Boy, I sure wonder if players knew about this problem years in advance and tried to warn Hypergryph before it was too late. I'm guessing this is linking to Alpha Endfield review from a year ago. We're not reading all of that. There's a movie scene I like to reference, which will serve as decent caps on here. In the first act of Cars 2006, okay, alright, we're going to Cars, interesting. Lightning McQueen ignores his crew and continues the race with without fresh tyres. No tyres, just gas. He then proceeds to blow out, causing his pit crew to lose their shit. This is how it feels to read Endfield 1.0, not just as a long-time Arknights player, but as a writer who actually studied this shit. Endfield 1.0 is bad because it takes no risks and sets terrible expectations, so for all of the experience they've had with Arknights proper, Hypergryph should have known better. Thanks for reading, here's hoping for improvement. Now, I somewhat agree with this conclusion. I do believe Hypergryph have feared taking risks initially, right? I think it's clear how they've pulled back on certain tones with certain stories that we've seen change a little bit. Does it set terrible expectations? I don't know. I think that's a unique thing, right? It doesn't set terrible expectations for me because I've seen enough beams of light in what we've got so far, and I haven't even finished it, to be like, okay, I'm confident that there's gonna be some good there. Will there be enough of it? I don't know. And is there gonna be lots of stuff that I don't find just up to scratch? I'm sure there will be. And I think as well, I'm gonna say like a full-on Hypergryph here. I want to give them a bit of time because, as I say, we've gone from a 2D game where writers are just left to go, fucking world. Write a fucking book, bro, and we'll put it on screen. Simple. And it'll be interjected with some stages. That's Arknights, right? That's Arknights. It's a story with gameplay stages attached to it. Just happens to be really good gameplay. This is different. You've had to curtail those writers, you've had to give them something, but then you've had to bring in a director and editors and animators and all of this sort of stuff, right? And be like, okay, we can't do that because there's no fucking way the animators are ever going to be able to animate that. And the director's in here putting his thing in as like, I want these angles and I want this and I want that and I want this. And of course, that's just going to change things, right? So I think in that regard, this idea that they should have known better, I agree with it, but there's also, I'll give them a bit of credit that they're operating in a different theatre, right? That they're not operating in the same space they were operating in before. And I expected as much. I expected some stumbling, them to stumble out the gates, to be some bumps in the road, if you will. I think 1.0, specifically Valley 4, is pretty weak. If you compare it to Arknights, it's fucking pretty crap in comparison, right? if you compare it to a lot of the gacha games, you know, your Genshins, your Wooers, maybe not so much ZZZs, because I think ZZZ started really strong for me. And probably not Star Rail as well, because like Star Rail was pretty decent out the bat for me as well. But if you compare, let's say if you compare it to Genshin and Wooer for me, probably more so Wooer, because I think even Genshin probably started a bit stronger, if I'm honest. I was like, alright, oh shit, man, I sound like a right Wooer hater. I think it's just comparable, right? I think as a game, as a 1.0, I think it's better. Now, if you're talking story, it's probably about the same. Maybe weaker in some parts, stronger in others. And I think it's fair to say, I think Wuthering Waves has got to a good point, right? Apparently 3.0 is the best story that's been writ. Now, I take that with a pinch of salt because every fucking patch is the best patch that's ever been made when it comes to Wuthering Waves. But I've seen this from people who don't even play Wooer are saying, yeah, it's kind of a banger. Like this post, right? There's plenty of things I agree with in this post. I do. 1.0 does feel shallow, specifically Valley 4. It's mired by the introduction of the gameplay systems. They're just not introduced very well at all. I understood they tried to tie the game and the systems together. I think they failed a little bit initially. The stakes do feel low in Valley 4. There really doesn't feel like there is any stakes. It feels like you are on a mission to just start to build a planet out and fix stuff right, which I suppose from an immersion point, you could say, well, this kind of feels immersive. But from a storytelling point, not so great. I do think they are... oh, my camera died again. Bro, what is going on with this shit? I do think they are afraid to take risks. Do think they are afraid to take risks. Let me activate again. There we go. I'm going to have to disconnect that shit and sort it out, man. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on with it, man. So yeah, I do think they are afraid to take risks. I think that's fair. I think we've got to stop comparing 6 years of content from Arknights and expecting all of that within the first month or two of Endfield. It's just not fair. You know, it's just not fair, man. It's definitely not fair. And I think as well, to expect the tone to just match it one for one, it's a different game. It's a different setting, and we're in a different mission, right? There's a whole different thing going on here, because you know, if you want us to tread the same paths over and over, at the end of the day, we're just going to be playing Arknights in 3D, which again would be fucking awesome. But I want to obviously tell a different story, right? Again, this is one of those things for me. I know a lot of people hate to hear this. They're like, oh, it's just debate to wait for the game. Oh, it's just 1.0, wait for it. But I think when it comes to a story, you kind of have to do that, right? Now, don't get me wrong. You can say 1.0 story is shit. And I'm not going to even argue with you. Honestly, I'm not. Because I think you've got valid points to say that you think, because at the end of the day, story's subjective, right? But there's plenty of weak points in this game in terms of story. So if you come along and went, yeah, story kind of sucks, bro, I'll be like, you know, there's some things I like, but, you know, you're not exactly wrong. It's got weaknesses, right? But at the same time, who's to say that's going to be the case by year 3? No, maybe at 2.0 of Endfield, we're doing what people were doing in Wooer, or at 3.1 where people are like, oh my god, it's fucking cinema. It's cinema. Now, it's a shame that you have to get there, right? Of course, that age-old thing of, we'll just play it for 100 hours and then it gets good. I know that's not a fair defense of a game, and it doesn't change the start of a game, right? If a game's start is bad, it's always a bad start. As he said, if the first chapter doesn't hook you, most people aren't going to get past the first chapter. Totally fair statement to make. But I think with a live service game, you know, there is a bit of that, like, kind of have to wait, right? I know people hate it, but like, you know, I think it's a fair thing to say as well. I actually want this story as separate as possible from Arknights. Okay, based. But the info dumping too much, it's just not good info. We're not in Talos to London, not Terra Birmingham. Imagine they start with all the wording from OG AK tons. Exactly, yeah. If they hit everybody with all that stuff, people would know what the fuck's going on. They'd be like, what? You know? I already heard some people complaining about that. Actually, I'm supposed to know these terms. And it's like, well, most of them are self-explanatory and are explained in the game where they're not. I don't get this. There are no stakes. Emmin's health is deteriorating every time they're going for hibernation. It was directly stated, if you don't change things at time. Well, I think personally around the Emmin, right, you have got that. But the stakes themselves aren't there yet. But I'm cool with that. I don't mind a slow simmer. Because for me, a game's different to a book, right? You play a game, right? And you don't play a book and you don't play a movie. So it's more incumbent upon them to hook you in terms of the storytelling. And that doesn't mean a game should have a shit story. But if you can keep people going with really good gameplay, it does allow you a bit of freedom to start ramping up. And that doesn't take away from before that ramp up happens. It's bad. We can all agree on that, right? But I think a game does have that extra element of it can keep you hooked with a good game. And I think this is a good game. I do want things to improve, right? I do. I don't want a one-for-one mirror of Arknights in its tone and its set pieces, but I would like them to go there. I would. I want there to be dark, gritty stuff. I do. But I also do like it when these games touch on the nice, fluffy things, right? And, you know, when Tang Tang gets introduced, I love that shit. You know, Tang Tang, Chen, and Enmin, everyone's been a bit goofy. They're trying to play into her character. They're trying to connect with her because I'm the boss here. You need to be my subordinate. So they're like, yeah, man. All right, boss. Do your thing. I like that stuff, right? It feels nice, man. It's sometimes to appreciate the good things, you got to have the darkness, and then to feel the despair of said darkness, you got to have a bit of that juxtaposition of the nice moments, haven't you? So yeah. Jushi's inconsistent and antagonist. She gets mogged instantly by Ardisha too. Yeah, dude just comes in and he's like, oh, okay. Who's my guy? So yeah, there's a lot of things I agree with this. I think there's a lot of things I agree. Not that I disagree with them specifically. I think they've got expectations that I think they just couldn't have met yet, right? I think there's a lot of people who have expectations with Endfield that it is going to take 1 or 2 years to meet, because it's a live service story. By its definition, it's going to be a slow burn on stuff, right? That doesn't mean the start has to be bad, though. That's fair. But I also think we can't expect 5 years of ups and downs to being the first 2 months of the game at the same time. But yeah, you know what? I think there was a lot of fair points in this. I definitely do agree that I think Hypergryph is afraid to take risks. Are they stupid for that? No. They've probably spent fucking 200 million quid on this game or more, right? They're going to be a little bit afraid, at least at first. Once it starts making bank, then maybe they'll start playing around with things, right? So yeah, man. Yeah, you'll have to let me know what you guys think as well. I think it's an interesting conversation around the game, because I think the general consensus is shit needs work, right? At least. 2, it's pretty bad. I'll tell you where I am. So far for me, I think Valley 4's story felt non-existent. That's how I'll put it. It was just like, it's just there. I'm getting the setups that might be happening. I'm liking some of the characters, but it was just there. It wasn't bad. It wasn't good. It was just there. For a lot of people, though, that's really bad. And sometimes something kind of, I guess you could argue, maybe being boring is worse than it being bad, right? You know, you either want it to be good or so bad it's good, or boring can be worse, right? So I don't know. But it definitely needs work. But yeah, I've still been enjoying the game so far, but I would like the story to improve. But I am confident that it will. Well, you know, maybe we'll come back in a year's time and be like, it fucking sucks, boys. It's over. It's done. It's trash.